All right, what's up, guys? This is a test run for the BamaInsider.com YouTube account. Alabama got a really big commitment today in four-star defensive lineman Jason Jones out of Calera High School, just outside of Birmingham. Huge commitment for the Crimson Tide. Gives Alabama 5 commitments in this 2020 recruiting class. Crazy. Alabama already has 5 commitments in 2020. 3 of those guys being in-state guys. I mean, Alabama's just absolutely crushing it right now in-state. Brent Key, Alabama's offensive line coach, kind of leading the charge there. You look at the 2019 class, Alabama's been able to really do extremely well, getting some big-name guys like Pierce Quick, Talia Tungaviola, Paul Tyson, Will Ricard, Amari Kite, DJ Dell. I mean, and then you just go on into the into this 2020 class, and it's already starting off extremely special. We saw a big quarterback commitment a few weeks ago in Carson Beck out of Jacksonville, kind of out of nowhere, a kid that all of a sudden got an offer at Alabama's camp a couple weeks ago, did extremely well. And there's a lot of big name quarterbacks in this 2020 class that we've been talking about for a while. And all of a sudden, this kid kind of came out of nowhere. He was a baseball commitment to Florida, and we got a chance to speak to him shortly after that offer happened. And he said that he was going to make a decision whether or not he was going to play baseball or football in a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden committed to play football at Alabama. So that was obviously a big get for the Crimson Tide there. He's actually one of the only kids that's not ranked. So I got a feeling we're going to see a ranking pop up on his name here pretty soon. But back to Jason Jones, a really big kid. Really like his size. He's 6'6", 315, 320 pounds. He can move around on either side of the ball, and he probably doesn't want to hear that. I mean, he's a defensive lineman. That's the only position he's really played. But he could be in my opinion, an All-American offensive lineman if he wanted to. I mean, he's extremely athletic, moves extremely well, and even though he's 320 pounds, he doesn't look like a 320-pound kid. He looks like he's 285 pounds. He just moves extremely well for his size, extremely athletic, and he's only a junior. He's going to continue to get better, continue to improve in several areas. His strength. Continue to get his body in better shape, and once he gets to Alabama and starts working with Coach Scott Cochran, he's going to continue to look, going to continue to develop his body and make sure that he does the right things on and off the field. Got a question coming in. Who recruited him? Alabama offensive line coach Brent Key. Coach Key has been very instrumental in this kind of in-state haul that we're seeing. We hadn't really seen a ton of in-state guys for Alabama. Alabama's kind of focused more nationally than they have. And I wouldn't say that they've focused more nationally than in-state, because they're focusing on in-state guys that they really want. And in the past, I would say even prior to Nick Saban, we would see 15, 16 in-state guys in a recruiting class. And now, that's not really the case. Alabama's able to recruit, kids from coast to coast. They're able to get kids from Hawaii, California, New Jersey, Virginia, South Florida, Texas, Utah. They've been able to go pretty much wherever they wanted and gotten elite players, not just kids that, maybe some of the in-state schools don't want, but kids that are number one at their position in the country, whether it's, going out to California and getting Najee Harris, the number 1 running back in the country, or going to, going out to New Jersey and getting Minkah Fitzpatrick, or going to South Florida and getting Calvin Ridley, guys like that. And I think guys like that have really made it, easier for Alabama to go to these places and recruit guys like, 5-star type kids, Rivals 100 type kids that we keep seeing land at Alabama. Kids are seeing places have, kids from these parts of the country are seeing kids from their part of the country have success in Tuscaloosa, and it makes them want to go to Alabama, not just the the national championships and the first round draft picks, but just kids from their part of the country having success in Tuscaloosa and knowing that they're able to do just that. I got a question coming in. What are our chances with Flo? Justin Flo, the number one linebacker in the country in the 2020 class. Obviously, Alabama's off to a great start in 2020. They want to continue that trend and get elite prospects. And I got a chance to spend some time with Justin Flo at the Rivals 100 5-star challenge this past week. Wow. I mean, just extremely impressive kid. Probably one of the most physically put together kids at the linebacker position that we've seen in a few years. I mean, he looks like he's he could easily be a 5-star linebacker in this year's recruiting class. He's just that impressive of a specimen, and he's going to make it back to Tuscaloosa. He was at the cookout a few weeks ago, and I think he's going to make it. He says he's going to make it back for an official visit. Of course, it's still pretty early in his recruiting saga, but I think he'll make it back to Tuscaloosa again. We may see him back next summer. I'm sure he'd like to try to make it to a game. Obviously, that's a little difficult for guys who are in California making it to a game after a Friday night all the way in Tuscaloosa, unless you're on an official visit where you're getting that flight paid for and all your expenses paid for. So we may not see him back in Tuscaloosa until maybe next year. Maybe next summer or even the following fall when he wants to come back in for an official visit. But I would say USC is probably going to be the toughest competition there. He grew up just outside of LA and a big USC fan growing up. But he's keeping an open mind. He really liked Alabama. He's got a great relationship with Tosh Lapoy. Tosh has been recruiting him for a while. And they really like it. A funny story, I spoke with one of his assistant coaches, and he said that he took him over to Waffle House for the first time, and he just absolutely loved it. He said they really enjoyed that, and it was his first time going there, so he thought it was a great place. So Waffle House may be a big selling tool for him down the road. Kyle just asked, talk more about Wanda Robinson, 2019 prospect out of Kentucky. Very talented wide receiver. You could almost call him Mighty Mouse. I mean, he's a little on the short side, but man, can he absolutely play? I mean, he was fantastic at the 5-star challenge, and Alabama extended him an offer a few weeks ago at Alabama's camp down in Tuscaloosa. And Alabama's looking at probably taking 3 wide receivers in this year's recruiting class. I don't really see them taking any more. And they've kind of been in the looking at trying to get 2 big receivers and maybe 1 slot guy. The 1 slot guy I feel really good about Alabama landing is John Mechie out of New Jersey. He's actually originally from Maryland, but attending prep school in New Jersey this year. I think John Mechie is probably going to be one of the next commitments for Alabama. He's been favoring Alabama since his official visit earlier earlier in June. Now that we're in July, and I think he'll jump on board pretty soon. But Alabama's still trying to go after some bigger type receivers. Milton Wright was in Tuscaloosa a few weeks ago for a visit out of Kentucky. Another kid out of Kentucky that they really like a lot. George Pickens, the Auburn commitment. Out of Hoover High School, Alabama would love to try to flip his commitment. Probably going to be pretty tough. I mean, he's been committed to Auburn for almost a year now, and he's pretty solid. But he's still taking some visits. He's still taking, still talking to some schools, and Alabama is certainly one of those schools that he's talking to. He's visited Tuscaloosa a few times. Was at the spring game back in April. And made it down to Tuscaloosa in early June. So I expect we will see him back at Alabama again. Maybe for a few more games and maybe for an official visit down the road. So Alabama is still heavily recruiting him. And the success that they're having right now in state, that may play a big factor. So we'll see what happens with him down the road. Jameson Williams, another wide receiver that we saw at the 5-star challenge last week, who visited Alabama, has Alabama in his top 2, along with Ohio State. He's already taken his official visit to Ohio State. Visited Ohio State 2 weekends ago, and so Alabama still has an official visit left with him. They're going to get him back on campus. I think Alabama's got a good chance with him. So I think a lot's going to kind of depend on what maybe happens with some of these other guys, especially with the small number at the wide receiver position. But Wanda Robinson, very electric, very exciting player. Somebody that I really liked a lot at the 5-star challenge, and we'll see what happens with him. But he's a great player, and he actually told me he's going to be back in Tuscaloosa. And if I haven't mentioned this early on, Alabama's actually going to have another cookout in late July. We know that it's a dead period right now, but after July the 25th, it's back on for a couple weeks, and Alabama's going to have some big name guys back on campus for another Champions Cookout. Rondell Robinson was one of those guys that told me last week that he's going to make it back down to Tuscaloosa for that visit. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Alabama goes ahead and accepts his commitment. Looking at some other questions, and someone just asked if Wandell may commit at the 5-star challenge, at the cookout. And like I said, we'll kind of wait and see what happens with that small receiver class, and possibly we might possibly see a commitment if Alabama pushes for him. Josh Gaddis has been keeping in touch with him almost daily, sending him some different films and stuff, and kind of breaking things down. Josh Gaddis, the new Alabama wide receivers coach, who seems to be making a big impact on the recruiting front so far. Especially doing a really good job on social media. We're seeing him post different things every single day on social media that I think has been fantastic and very beneficial for the Crimson Tide so far in this year's recruiting class. Trying to get these 2019 guys on board. We're seeing kind of a major push from a lot of the assistant coaches, especially guys like Josh Gaddis, Pete Golding, Brent Key, Jeff Banks, Carl Scott. I mean, all these new assistant coaches have been doing just a fantastic job on social media, really pushing hard, kind of pushing out a lot of facts about Alabama, not just trying to sell them on. It's easy to sell Alabama, and I think they're just trying to reiterate what's been going on in Tuscaloosa, really over the last 10 years. And we saw kind of a drop off last year in the recruiting rankings. Alabama hasn't been outside the top 5 on the Rivals.com team rankings since 2007. And for the first time, we saw that last year. Alabama missed on some guys late in the recruiting process. And a lot of people thought, is Alabama starting to lose some of its swagger on the recruiting trail? Is Alabama starting to fade a little bit? What people don't realize is Alabama was replacing a lot of coaches, and there was a lot of uncertainty last year. I talked to so many different people, and a lot of people weren't sure who was still going to be on the staff come signing day or come shortly after signing day. There was a lot of decisions that were going to be made, and obviously we saw a lot of change. We saw just at quarterback, Brian Daboll, ends up leaving. The quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, running backs coach Burton Burns ends up leaving, stepping aside. Wide receivers coach Mike Loxley was the wide receivers coach, but nobody was really sure what was going to happen there. Was he going to end up being named offensive coordinator at Alabama? Was he going to end up possibly leaving and going somewhere else? I think that if he wouldn't have been named offensive coordinator, I think he would have left and gone somewhere else. I think there was definitely some other opportunities out there. We saw Jeff Banks come in and become the new special teams coach and tight ends coach. We saw Joe Panunzio comes in and replaces Burton Burns at the running back position. And this is just offense. I mean, we saw a lot of changes on defense too. We saw Derek Ansley leave, defensive backs coach, leave and go to the Oakland Raiders. We saw Jeremy Pruitt, defensive coordinator, become the head coach at Tennessee. Carl Dunbar, defensive line coach, ends up going back to the NFL, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, just so much that happened that people just don't realize coaching-wise. So, a lot of changes were made, and we see coaches leave just about every single year, but it doesn't happen all the time. And it's at least not in terms of those numbers. And we saw that this year, and I think that really affected Alabama's recruiting class, and that's why they finished with the number 7 class in the country instead of a top 3 class like most Alabama fans are used to seeing. And obviously they're back at it this year. They've got the number 1 class in the country. They're certainly back to where they're used to, and there's a lot of big name guys who are still out there. They're still recruiting, and you look at the recruiting class right now, and you have all of their guys who are committed are 4 stars and a few 3 stars. There are no 5 stars currently committed, and they have the number 1 class in the country. And they have a lot of guys that they're still heavily recruiting that are 5 stars that I feel like Alabama's got a good chance to sign in this year's class. I'm going to go to the next question here. Do you think we keep Tanner Commit? I assume you're talking about Tanner Bowles, the lineman out of Kentucky who committed few months ago. Yeah, I do. Tanner's made a few trips down to Tuscaloosa and since his commitment, and Alabama wants to sign 5 offensive linemen. That's kind of been their number from day one, 5 offensive linemen in this year's class. And Tanner Bowles is kind of one of those utility type linemen where you can move him around. He's about 6'3", 6'4", 285 pounds. And he can play any of the offensive line positions. And I think that can be said for a few of the current commitments. Tanner Bowles, Pierce Quick as well. I think Pierce Quick, I don't think he's limited to just playing tackle. I think he can play guard. I think he can, he could also play center. I know most people want Clay Webb to be that center in this year's class, but Pierce Quick certainly can do it as well. He worked out at center at Alabama's camp earlier this month. So Alabama's got some great offensive line commitments. Amari Kite, Pierce Quick, and Tanner Bowles. And obviously they want to get 2 more guys. They would love for those guys to be Clay Webb, the number 1 player in the state of Alabama out of Oxford. He's recruited as a center / guard. I wouldn't limit him to just center because he can. I think he can certainly play guard as well. And then Darnell Wright, the 5-star offensive tackle out of West Virginia. I would expect we will probably see him back in Tuscaloosa before the start of the season, and obviously he'll make a trip back to Alabama for an official visit down the road. But those are 2 big targets that I think Alabama's got a great chance to sign to add to this elite offensive line class they already have. I'm gonna go to another question here. Who will be Bama's highest rated commitment at the end? We'll see. I think it'll probably be Darnell Wright. As of right now, I think they sit really good with him. He's a number 2 overall player in the Rivals 100. But I'd also look at Kaitlyn Thibodeaux. Kaitlyn is one of the elite defensive linemen. I'd say D lineman. He's a D end outside linebacker. Alabama's actually recruiting him more as an outside linebacker, rush end. Kind of like that jack linebacker position. Just such an elite player out of California, originally from Louisiana. I think we're going to see him make his way back to the South. Does that mean he'll end up at Alabama? Could he possibly end up at FSU? I think those are probably the 2 schools fighting tooth and nail for him right now. And he made a trip back to Alabama last week for the cookout. It's his 2nd trip to Alabama in about 3 months. So I think Alabama sits very high on his list, and obviously we'll see him back in Tuscaloosa again. Just came out with a top 5. Alabama was on that list to no surprise, and he's currently ranked number 4 in the Rivals 100. So we'll see if he ends up moving up, see where Darnell Wright ends up being. But I think one of those 2 guys end up in Alabama's class, maybe both. So one of those 2 guys will probably be the highest ranked kids in Alabama's class. Going on to the next question. What are the numbers for 2019? Everybody always asks me about numbers. It's been going on for such a long time, and every single year, it's always how are the numbers going to shape out? How are the numbers going to shape out? And I always say the same thing. Don't worry about the numbers. Just don't even worry about it. Just know this is how many they're going to try to sign. And, everything else, just let the coaching staff and the administration, whoever, let them figure it out. You don't need to sit there and worry about it. I'm not sitting here worrying about it. I'm not sitting here, thinking, okay, this kid, how can Alabama fit this many numbers in when there's this many scholarships on the team? Not worried about it, because Alabama's got to figure it out. What we know is they're going to try to sign 28 guys. That's how many. That's the number this year. They want to sign 28 guys and kind of go from there. And we'll kind of see what happens. Obviously, they fell a little short last year. They wanted to sign a few more guys than they did in the 2019 class. So you got a couple available scholarships from last year's team, and we'll probably see some. We'll see some guys come in early this year. I'm not sure the exact number. I'd have to kind of go back and ask everybody currently committed, and a lot of kids don't know until they get into the fall, get to their school year to try to figure out, am I for sure going to be able to graduate early? They really don't know that until the fall, and maybe not until December. Some kids obviously are hoping to get on campus, but some kids end up not. So we'll see how many kids end up, enrolling early and getting on campus in January. But just looking at the current class right now and talking to the guys, I know it's going to be a higher number. Last year wasn't really a high number. I think 4 or 5 kids. 2 years ago, we saw a big number. We saw, I know it was over 10. I can't remember. It may have been 15 or 16 guys that enrolled early. It was a crazy number. And I think we'll probably see that sort of number. May not be as high, but I think we'll certainly see a big number of guys enroll early this year as well. With so many guys committing early, so many guys that are going to be already on the commitment list. I think Alabama, before the season starts, I would be shocked if we don't see 20 commitments, and maybe even more. I mean, it could easily be 21, 22 guys on the recruiting board before the start of the season. So we'll keep kind of a close eye on that and see what happens. But we're going to start doing these video chats more. I know Kyle's been doing it, for our subscribers. We're going to start doing it more for the recruiting side a little bit. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and we'll be promoting it and hopefully getting a lot of guys on board asking questions. I know we do the recruiting Q&A all the time on the Bama Insider recruiting board, but I definitely want you guys to come on here, ask questions. Obviously I'm gonna be dropping some news, breaking down players, and talking about the recruiting classes, any big visits that come up, any big events that are going on in Tuscaloosa, official visits, football games, big football weekends. We'll be talking about that here on the YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, let anyone who's an Alabama fan know about this, because we're certainly going to be, be bringing the heat every time we log on to this YouTube channel talking about Alabama football recruiting. But that's all we're going to do right now. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.